Hello, everyone. She was too strange, too intense, too pale, too much. And that was exactly the point. In a decade ruled by supermodels with perfect hair, golden tans, and girl-next-door smiles, Kristen McMenamy showed up like a storm. She had no eyebrows, no interest in being cute, and no patience for anyone's approval. She walked like a question mark and posed like a rebellion. Her face confused people. Her presence unsettled them. And that was when fashion began to change. At the peak of her career, she shaved her eyebrows off, chopped her hair short, and said, "I am not pretty. I am powerful." So how did Kristen McMenamy go from small-town girl to high-fashion alien? And why did the industry built on beauty fall in love with a woman who refused to be beautiful? Kristen McMenamy was born in 1964 in Easton, Pennsylvania, a quiet town with more parking lots than runways. Her family was middle class, Catholic, and deeply traditional. Her father worked as a mechanical engineer. Her mother stayed at home to raise the children. Kristen was one of 7 siblings. In a house full of noise, she often retreated into her own head. She was bookish, observant, and already aware that she did not quite fit the mold. She was tall and skinny, with sharp features and a nervous energy. Classmates teased her. Strangers stared. She never felt beautiful in the way society defined it. And she learned early to stop trying. Instead, she leaned into her weirdness. She made jokes, she wore strange clothes, she dyed her hair, and slowly, she began to see her difference not as something to hide, but something to sharpen. As a teenager, Kristen felt the pull of escape. She was too big for her town, too restless for the expectations around her. After graduating high school, she enrolled in college but dropped out quickly. She moved to New York City with no plan, no contacts, and no idea what she was walking into. She took odd jobs and lived in cheap apartments, surviving on coffee and attitude. The city was harsh, but it gave her space to become who she was. One day, someone suggested she try modeling. She laughed. She thought it was a joke. She did not look like a model. She looked like a misfit. But she went to an agency anyway, just to see. And that first rejection became a dare. For the next few years, Kristen knocked on doors and was told no again and again. Agencies said she was too unconventional, too old, too thin, too strange. But one photographer saw what others did not. He saw the drama in her face, the wild intelligence in her eyes, the willingness to be ugly in a world obsessed with perfection. That was her power. And it was about to explode. Kristen did not enter fashion as a muse. She entered as a disruption. She was not raised to be a model. She became one in spite of everything. And the girl from Pennsylvania, who once made herself small just to survive, was now learning to take up space, not by fitting in, but by refusing to. Kristen McMenamy did not burst into the fashion world with instant success. Her look was not what the industry wanted. In the late 1980s, modeling agencies were still chasing soft glamour and classic beauty. Kristen was neither. Her features were sharp, her expressions intense, her presence unsettling. She was not trying to be elegant. She was trying to be real. And that made people uncomfortable. At first, the rejections were constant. They told her she was too skinny, too pale, too old to be starting. But Kristen did not retreat. She became louder. She cut her hair. She wore strange outfits. She posed for small photographers with big ideas. And slowly, underground magazines and edgy stylists began to notice. She was not offering perfection. She was offering a mirror to something raw. And fashion, though slow to change, was finally ready for something that felt alive. Her breakthrough came not with a smile by, but with a stare. One photo shoot led to another. One runway turned into 5. She walked for Jean-Paul Gaultier, then Karl Lagerfeld. The more she leaned into her strangeness, the more the world leaned back. Kristen had no interest in being pretty. She shaved her eyebrows off. She wore black lipstick and chopped her hair unevenly. She became a blank canvas for designers who were tired of conventional beauty. Her presence demanded that you look again and again, because it never said what you thought it did. In the early 1990s, Steven Meisel and Peter Lindbergh began photographing her regularly. They captured her not as a fashion doll, but as a character in her own dark fairy tale. Her face could be romantic in one frame, monstrous in the next. She was not afraid of distortion. She embraced it. And in doing so, she gave fashion something it desperately needed: unpredictability. Kristen McMenamy was not the type to be molded. She molded the space around her. She did not walk into a room and try to impress. She arrived, stared straight through you, and let the silence do the work. In a business filled with imitation, she was original. And originality, when mixed with fearlessness, is a rare and dangerous thing. She had spent her life being told she was too strange to belong. Now the fashion world was hanging on every movement of that strange, unforgettable face. By the early 1990s, Kristen McMenamy was no longer just a curiosity on the runway. She was a revolution. Her look, once rejected, had become the new high fashion standard. She was suddenly everywhere on the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and ID in campaigns for Chanel, Versace, and Calvin Klein, walking for designers who wanted not just a model, but a statement. Her absence of eyebrows became iconic. Her icy stare and skeletal frame defined an entire aesthetic. She was not selling aspiration. She was selling confrontation. She dared you to rethink what beauty meant. Kristen's peak came at a moment when fashion itself was changing. The age of the smiley supermodel was giving way to something colder, more cerebral, and more provocative. Kristen fit that shift perfectly. She brought drama to every movement. Her walk was unpredictable, her poses theatrical, her energy untamed. Photographers adored her because she never gave them the same image twice. She was high fashion's version of chaos, controlled but unfiltered, and in a world designed around artificial perfection. Her refusal to soften made her unforgettable. In 1992, she walked the Chanel Haute Couture show in a see-through bridal gown with a shaved head and no eyebrows. The moment became legendary. It was not about sex or elegance. It was about power. Kristen did not wear clothes. She embodied them. She turned garments into emotion. She could look like a goddess one second, a ghost the next. She gave fashion something deeper than beauty. She gave it meaning. Designers like Gianni Versace and Alexander McQueen gravitated toward her because she could carry extreme looks without flinching. She wore spikes, feathers, latex, and lace as if they were her skin. She never apologized for being too much. In fact, she leaned further into it every season. Her photos with Peter Lindbergh became art pieces, stark, emotional, human. She was not afraid of aging, weight loss, or transformation. She welcomed it. She let her body tell the story. She let her face crack. And the industry followed. At her peak, Kristen McMenamy was not just a model. She was a force. She did not represent the woman you wanted to be. She represented the parts of yourself you were afraid to show. And in doing so, she redefined not only fashion's future, but its conscience. Kristen McMenamy never asked for approval. She built a career by rejecting it. Her entire presence in fashion was an act of rebellion, not through noise or protest, but through refusal. She refused to smile when others did. She refused to be sexy when others tried to seduce. She refused to soften her image or make herself easier to understand. And somehow, by rejecting the rules, she created a space where everything strange became beautiful. Her most radical decision came in the early 1990s when she shaved off her eyebrows completely. It was not a stunt. It was a declaration. She was not here to decorate. She was here to disturb. Her bare face became iconic alien, sculptural, and impossible to ignore. Fashion had never seen anything like it. And instead of hiding her age or trying to cling to youth, she leaned into the discomfort of growing older in a business that worshipped teenage perfection. She once said in an interview that she was not interested in being beautiful. She was interested in being unforgettable. And she was. Even among a sea of supermodels, Kristen stood apart. While others cultivated polished brands, she embraced mess. She took risks others avoided. She made faces in front of the camera, fell dramatically on the runway, walked barefoot, posed in mud, wore wigs made of twigs. She became the high priestess of unpredictability. Kristen also refused to play the celebrity game. She avoided gossip, red carpets, and self-promotion. She gave few interviews and kept her private life private. She was not building a lifestyle brand. She was building a myth. And myths do not beg for attention. They pull you in whether you are ready or not. As she aged, her rebellion deepened. While many of her peers faded away or tried to preserve their youth, Kristen made a different choice. She let her hair go silver. She stopped hiding her wrinkles. She walked for Valentino and Fendi with the same intensity she had in her 20s. Only now with the defiance of a woman who had outlived every industry trend. She became a symbol of creative freedom, of aging with power, of staying strange in a world that rewards conformity. Kristen McMenamy never tried to belong. She made the industry come to her. And once it did, it never looked the same again. Kristen McMenamy never disappeared in the traditional sense. She did not crash. She did not burn. But she did fade, slowly, deliberately, and without explanation. One moment, she was the face of avant-garde fashion, and the next, she was simply gone from the spotlight. No tabloid scandal, no dramatic farewell, just absence. In the late 1990s, the industry changed again. The rise of commercial beauty and polished perfection began to replace the raw experimentation that had defined the earlier decade. Designers wanted symmetry, agencies wanted predictability, and the space for Kristen's brand of chaos began to shrink. She still modeled, but the magic was quieter now. The wildness that once electrified every frame was harder to place in a culture obsessed with control. Fashion had moved on, and so had she. She got married, she became a mother. She relocated to the English countryside, far from the lights, far from the noise. She traded the runway for the garden, the studio for silence. And for a while, it seemed like Kristen McMenamy, the alien beauty. The fashion anarchist had retreated forever into the myth she had created. But silence does not always mean peace. In interviews years later, Kristen spoke about the quiet agony of aging in an industry that pretends to worship uniqueness but rewards youth. She spoke about loneliness, about rejection, about feeling invisible in the very world she had once helped define. For someone who had lived as a symbol of defiance, fading into the background was not easy. It was a kind of mourning. She re-emerged briefly in the early 2010s, walking runways with her signature silver hair and stormy glare. But her comeback was not a return to glory. It was a confrontation. She walked with the weight of everything she had seen, every era she had outlived. The fashion world clapped, but it also looked away. She was not the image they wanted to project. She was the truth they had buried. Kristen McMenamy never had a dramatic fall, but what she experienced was something more haunting. She became a ghost in the very industry she once redefined. And when she stood on stage years later and said that modeling made her feel both powerful and disposable, you could hear it in her voice, the echo of a woman who gave fashion her face and was left with her silence. Kristen McMenamy never tried to be remembered, and maybe that is why she will never be forgotten. She was not a supermodel in the traditional sense, She was a mood, a shift, a glitch in the system, in every photo. She challenged the viewer not to admire her, but to question everything they thought beauty was supposed to be. Her legacy is not one of perfection. It is one of permission. Permission to be strange, to be extreme, to be unsettling, to be loud in your silence. Kristen gave fashion permission to feel again. She made the industry look at what it tried to avoid: age, anger, art. She became a reference point for every model who did not fit the mold, for every photographer tired of symmetry, for every designer who wanted to take a risk. Even now, when she walks a runway with her silver hair and sharp frame, she does not look like a comeback. She looks like a warning, a reminder that beauty is not static, it is not polite, and it is not safe. In a world that rewards compliance, Kristen McMenamy remains defiant, not out of bitterness, but out of principle. She once said, "I do not want to be beautiful. I want to be real." And in those words lives the entire philosophy of her life and work. Because what Kristen offered the world was not perfection. It was truth, dressed in couture, walking barefoot down a marble runway. So the next time fashion tries to erase the women who built its edge, look again. Kristen is still here, still fierce, still strange, and still making sure we never forget what it looks like when a woman refuses to be ordinary.